Assassin's Creed is a franchise I have a love-hate relationship with. It includes some of my absolute favorite gaming moments, as well as some of my most spectacular mauled-outs. Sometimes they even happen in the same game. To prepare myself for the release of Assassin's Creed Mirage, I embarked on a journey to play every single game in the AC series, including many of the obscure spin-off titles like Freedom Cry and Liberation. And much to my surprise, just as I was writing the script for this video, Ubisoft reached out to me and provided me with a review code for Assassin's Creed Mirage, so I'll be talking about my experience bounding across rooftops in Baghdad with Basim as well. In this video, we're going to do rapid-fire reviews of every single Assassin's Creed game. I'll also be ranking each title to determine my favorite game in the series. So buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and let's talk about how I played 18 different Assassin's Creed games this year. Let's start off with Assassin's Creed Mirage, since it's the newest game in the series that I'm sure all of you are wondering about. Has Ubisoft finally gone back to the old formula, providing us with a linear, story-driven, stealth-driven Assassin's adventure? Yes they have. But is it good? The first thing I want to point out about AC Mirage is the performance on PC. I have an RTX 3080 graphics card, and my machine exceeds the spec requirements to run this game. I had no problems running AC Valhalla at max settings, but in Mirage, my playthrough suffered from major drops in frame rate, and at times this game stutters more than Jimmy from South Park. I tried changing to a variety of different lower graphical settings, and this problem never completely went away. It comes in waves. Sometimes the game runs buttery smooth, but then all of a sudden it'll start dropping frames. So, I don't know. If you're planning on getting this game on PC, maybe check out a few more reviews and exercise some caution. I know there's going to be a day one patch that I didn't have access to for this review, but I'm really hoping this isn't going to be another Star Wars Jedi Survivor situation. But performance issues aside, what about the gameplay? Ubisoft definitely took some inspiration from a lot of their earlier games when designing Mirage, and this shines through in the gameplay. For starters, crowd blending is back. You can move seamlessly into groups of people to break line of sight with guards. You can also hire mercenaries, musicians, and thieves to attack or distract guards, which is a feature I don't think we've seen since Black Flag. This was a really big part of the Ezio trilogy as well. You also have a variety of stealth tools that you'll unlock throughout the game, such as throwing knives, blow darts, smoke bombs, and more. So you have all the ingredients you need to become a blade in the crowd. Baghdad has also been designed with parkour in mind. The system has a similar feel to Origins, except the city environment has a lot more handholds and paths for you to explore. I think people are really going to enjoy this system, although it's not quite as dynamic as Unity. You can also parkour down buildings again, although this is a mixed bag. Sometimes Basim will gracefully bound to the ground, but other times he'll pivot and hang off the side of the ledge, breaking all momentum you had built up. So it's going to take some time getting used to where he can actually parkour down seamlessly. But I definitely found myself utilizing parkour a lot more in Mirage than in the past 3 games, particularly to escape guards. One of the main side activities involves pickpocketing civilians, which has a similar timed minigame to assassinations on elite targets in Valhalla. Some of the time windows on these pickpockets are extremely narrow, and if you get caught, they'll route you out to the guards. As for progression, there is no leveling system in Mirage per se, but there is a basic skill tree. Most of the skills are minor quality of life features, such as increased tool capacity and increased perception for your bird. But there are some useful ones that add to gameplay, such as chain assassinations and the brand new Focus Assassin ability. When used from stealth, this ability allows you to tag and auto-kill up to 3 enemy targets. Basim will teleport to each enemy and one-shot them so long as they are in line of sight. This is the most fantastical ability in the game by far, and I know some people are going to complain about the lack of realism. But let me remind you, Altair shot a dude in Revelations 100 years before guns were invented. Ezio used a tank and machine gun in AC Brotherhood, and Evie had a Harry Potter stealth cloak in Syndicate. So this series has always bent away from historical realism in the interest of fun gameplay when it suits it. So how about the story in AC Mirage? Well, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, so I'll just say this. I wasn't particularly impressed by the story in this game. It just seemed to lack a central hook to drive the plot forward. And most of the time, it just felt like you were completing a random set of tasks for other members of the Brotherhood. Go here, find some evidence, track a target, here's a feather, go kill some guy and dip the feather in his blood. I was 10 hours into the game and all I could think was, is this going anywhere? Most of the characters weren't very memorable either, with the exception of your mentor Roshan, who sounds like she smokes about 2 packs a day.
Your day to display your prowess will come, but this day belongs to Basim.
Geez, Roshan, you need to lay off the hashish, homegirl. Speaking of voice acting, one other thing that was a bit jarring was the voice actor for Basim. They used a different VA to play Basim in this game, so that took me a while to get used to since the actor in Valhalla did such a great job with this character.
That was our chance to recover the stone without letting of blood. Remember your place, Eivor, or nothing good will come of all this.
There is a promissory note for workers here. It looks like Al Ghul arranges to purchase migrant laborers as well.
There are also a number of side activities you can complete, such as Tales of Baghdad, which are basically world events from Valhalla, contracts to earn crafting materials and tokens to hire mercs, and a handful of collectibles. My favorites were the mysterious shards, which allow you to unlock an Isu armor set, similar to the one Bayek gets in Origins. It even has the same voice modulation.
What have you got today?
Unfortunately, I am accounted for.
Overall, despite some of the problems I raised in this review, I enjoyed my time with Assassin's Creed Mirage, and I look forward to playing through the rest of the game this week. For better or worse, Ubisoft delivered on the request for a more focused, linear, and stealth-driven AC game, so I'm curious to see how the fan base receives it. But now that the new game is out of the way, let's go back to the beginning of the franchise with AC1. Assassin's Creed took the gaming world by storm in 2007 by providing us with a stealth gameplay experience unlike any we'd seen before. Hiding in plain sight as a blade in the crowd, Altair stalked his prey with a combination of cunning and subterfuge in order to get close enough to strike the killing blow with the now famous hidden wrist blade. AC1 provided us with a strong foundation, but as time has gone on, this game hasn't aged quite so gracefully. The parkour gameplay feels a bit sloppy compared to later titles, with awkwardly placed handholds that don't always make climbing routes easy to find. Plus, the core gameplay, particularly the rudimentary combat and investigation sequences, start to really drag down the experience in the later third. The premise of the game is incredibly simple. You're given 9 assassination targets in 3 different cities: Acre, Damascus, and Jerusalem. You start by traveling to the city, completing simple investigation tasks such as pickpocketing or beating up a dude for information, and finally tackling the assassination mission. The combat in AC1 is honestly not that great. Your primary weapons are a sword or hidden blade, and most encounters involve waiting for an enemy to strike you so you can block it and perform a counter kill. If you attack first, you're almost guaranteed to get blocked or parried, so there's a lot of waiting for enemies to strike first. It's the most turn-based feeling action game I've ever played. Exploration on the ground is also incredibly tedious in AC1. The game encourages rooftop parkour by turning street traversal into the most annoying game of Frogger. Around every bend, you'll be dodging hostile guards, shovey lunatics, snitching street merchants, and pesky broke bitches. Tell your mom to keep her hands off me. While I appreciate AC1 for giving birth to the franchise, I can't say I enjoy playing it that much in the present day. Assassin's Creed 2 is almost universally praised within the fandom, and with good reason. It takes everything the first game did well and made it even better. Ezio is much faster than Altair, which makes exploration snappier and more fun. You don't have to worry about human obstacles and guards mobbing you in the streets either, so you're not forced to do parkour, but encouraged to do it because it's more enjoyable. They added fast travel to cut out the tedium of traveling between cities. Parkour is improved with better world design, less jank, and more advanced moves that allow Ezio to climb higher and faster. The combat has also been refined with new weapons, tools, and ways to interact with it, like throwing sand or stealing enemy weapons. There's even a freaking gun for Cristo's sake. And of course, Ezio just has more Riz than Altair.
try to handle things yourself.
Your sister seemed quite satisfied with the handling I gave her earlier.
Out of all the early AC games, Assassin's Creed 2 is by far my favorite one. I found the story and missions to be particularly gripping as you uncover a sinister plot to tear apart the Italian world and hunt down its conspirators one by one. I don't really have much else to say about AC2. It's a phenomenal game, and if you haven't played it before, you owe it to yourself to try it out. Ezio's journey in AC2 was so popular that Ubisoft decided to turn it into a trilogy, firing off 2 more games in the 2 years that followed. But the results were mixed, to say the least. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is the second game in the Ezio trilogy and a favorite among the fans. But when I played this game earlier in the year, it just didn't resonate with me for 2 big reasons: the awful mission design and the lackluster story. The most frustrating thing about playing Brotherhood is the abundance of missions where you instantly fail if you're spotted for even a moment. The worst one is a mission where you and your mercenary pals disguise yourself as French guards. Along the way, you need to assassinate several different groups of French guards who may blow your cover. There are so many ways to fail this mission. If you run ahead of the group, you fail. If you don't kill the guards before your group arrives, you fail. If any guard spots you killing, instant fail. If you kill the last guard but he turns around and looks at you while you're killing him, instant fail. One of the big reasons I play stealth games is the freedom to complete objectives how I see fit. There are other ways to design stealth gameplay to encourage stealth and punish open combat without making the player instantly fail if they're spotted. The Hitman games do this much better in my opinion. 47 dies very quickly if you get detected and mobbed. Plus, you can only get the best rewards by maintaining stealth, ideally not getting detected at all. But there's no point in the game where you'll fail if a guard detects you. Brotherhood is also the point where Ubisoft started leaning heavily on tailing missions. You know, those obnoxious quests where you have to follow an NPC as they slowly walk across the map. Tailing missions have always been the worst part of Assassin's Creed, and I'm glad they finally stopped doing them for the most part in Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. Now, I know some jagoff's gonna write in the comments and say, I actually like tailing missions because it makes me feel like an assassin. But the truth is, most of these tailing missions don't actually involve killing a target. Usually, they're just investigation missions where you eavesdrop on a conversation or find the antagonist's secret base. Stuff like that. And from a gameplay perspective, it really doesn't get more dull and boring than that. But Brotherhood did make some significant improvements in other areas of gameplay, most notably the combat. Brotherhood is the first game to give you the chain kill ability, which is the single greatest achievement of this game in my opinion. Combat encounters are so much quicker and more fun when you can tear through a whole group of goons by chaining your kills together. Brotherhood really does pull off the assassin power fantasy well. And for what it's worth, the graphics and presentation in Brotherhood are of a much higher quality than AC2, despite only coming out a year later. It's clear that Ubisoft was trying to push themselves with this game. It's just a shame the story and missions aren't enjoyable enough to prop up the experience, at least for me. But I'm clearly in the minority opinion on this game, so if you like AC Brotherhood, then more power to ya. Assassin's Creed Revelations is the final game in the Ezio trilogy, and it received mixed reviews when it launched in 2011. But honestly, it's my favorite game in Ezio's journey, at least from a gameplay perspective. Parkour is much more fun with the addition of the hook blade for faster climbing, and strategically placed zip lines across rooftops. You can even perform zipline assassinations, which is incredibly fun. On top of that, Ezio can now vault over enemies, which can be useful when escaping the guards or pursuing a target. Revelations also expanded on the assassin recruit system that was first seen in Brotherhood. You now have more substantial side missions associated with ranking up your various lieutenants, and it really feels like Ezio is mentoring these assassins. I really had a lot of fun with these. I wasn't impressed with the crafting or weird tower defense games though, but you can honestly ignore these systems for the most part. Just rank up your assassin minions and keep your Templar awareness rating low, and you'll never have to defend your hideouts. Revelations also continued the business investment and monument renovation system from AC2 and Brotherhood, except this time when you buy into businesses, it puts you on the Templar's radar. If your Templar awareness rating gets high enough, a random event occurs where one of their soldiers will try to assassinate you. You can lower your rating by killing the assassin, bribing clerics, or killing Templar lieutenants who spawn into the map when your rating is high enough. I enjoyed this game of cat and mouse with the Templars, and I never grew tired of sicking my assassin homies on an unsuspecting Templar goon. As for the story, Revelations takes place 4 years after Brotherhood, and those must have been some pretty rough years because Ezio is looking real haggard in this game. The setting takes us away from Italy to the seat of the Ottoman Empire, Constantinople. I honestly don't remember much about the main plot, aside from a vague recollection of a power struggle within the Ottoman leadership, but I did really enjoy the portions where Ezio's story interacted with Altair, including a flashback where we learned Altair was the first perpetrator of gun violence in human history. All in all, Revelations is a great game that provides a satisfying finale to Ezio's journey, even if the core story is a little bit bland. I hate Assassin's Creed 3. It's an absolute dumpster fire of wasted potential. Where do I even begin with this? For starters, the combat is atrocious. Ubisoft tried to streamline the combat of the Ezio trilogy by making one-button counters and attacks, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But a lot of the enemies are now absolute damage sponges. It can take 5 to 6 hits to drop some of these enemies with Connor's hatchets. To make matters worse, the brutality of the combat animations don't match up with how much damage you do. So Connor will grab a dude's head, smash his face half a dozen times with a hatchet, the dude will drop to the ground and go limp, only to get up moments later as if nothing happened. And because there are no health bars in this game, I was never really sure when I actually finished an enemy off. On top of that, now the enemies have guns. So you can be in the middle of a tense melee combat encounter only to get one banged by a dude with a musket off screen. Ubisoft has done a mixed job, to say the least, when it comes to countering strapped enemies in this series. I think Rogue, Black Flag, and Syndicate do a good job with human shields and dodges, but AC3 and Unity drop the ball on this one particular combat feature. The ship combat also feels half-cocked and shoehorned into the game. Only Origins had worse ship combat than AC3. And as if the tailing missions weren't bad enough, now we have a few ship tailing missions thrown in for good measure. AC3 also squanders the setting of the American Revolution. Sure, we end up meeting a lot of major historical figures and participating in some of the most well-known moments of the Revolution. But when Ubisoft was designing these missions, they forgot to make them fun. Take Paul Revere's ride, for instance. The only real gimmick of this mission is that they removed the waypoint, so you have to guess which way you're going, or repeatedly ask Paul Revere for directions. Are you bored yet? Because I certainly am.
Yes! This is it! This is the way!
AC3 also manages to fuck up pacing and exploration. The game sends you to several different cities and zones throughout the game, such as Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. I was super excited to explore New York City in particular. So how do they introduce us to New York for the first time? With an incredibly tedious tailing mission that ends with Connor getting thrown into prison, where you'll spend the next hour trying to escape. It's like, bro, how about giving me some time to get my bearings and experience the city before shoving me into this dogshit content? And on top of that, you don't even get a proper final mission to the game because Connor just kills Charles Lee in a cutscene with no player input whatsoever. Ubisoft really phoned in the end of this game, which of course extended to the modern day plot as well. I swear, 2012 was a cursed year for video game endings, especially if the game had a 3 in the title. To top it all off, the one big plot twist of the game, the MGS2 style protagonist switch from Haytham to Connor, works to the game's disadvantage. AC3 starts strong with a charismatic, compelling protagonist who turns out to be a Templar. After that revelation, you're ripped out of the Animus and play the rest of the game as Connor, who has the personality of a paper towel roll. What an unfortunate twist. I could go on and on about how trash AC3 is. It's been 6 months since I played this game, and going through my footage is just making me mad all over again. So I'll just end on this. AC3 is still by far the buggiest Ubisoft game I've ever played, and that's saying a lot because there's some fierce competition. I fell through the map multiple times while exploring the forest regions. This is the remastered version, by the way. I just think Ubisoft was trying to do way too much with this game and failed to bring it all together into a cohesive and fun experience. Assassin's Creed Liberation is definitely one of the Assassin's Creed games of all time. Originally released on the handheld PlayStation Vita, Liberation is a strange game to say the least. One look at the opening cutscene of this game will give you a taste of what I mean.
Perfect for plantation work, monsieur. Look at this one. Hard-working, strong, healthy too.
You play as Aveline, a black female assassin in 18th century New Orleans. One of the most interesting features of this game is the disguise or persona system. There are 3 different personas you can undertake on your journey, each with their own unique gameplay benefits and drawbacks. The lady can charm and distract guards, allowing herself to waltz right into restricted zones without triggering combat. However, you cannot climb in that big-ass dress, and sometimes thugs will mug you on the street since they know you got that bag. The slave can infiltrate plantations by carrying crates, can climb anywhere, and can excite riots. But you have less combat tools, so it's gonna be a bad time if you get into an open fight. Both the slave and the lady can reduce their notoriety by ripping down wanted posters throughout the city. Notoriety is tracked separately for each persona. Finally, the assassin has all the combat abilities of a typical hidden one, with the downside of being detected faster by guards, and the fact that you can never completely eliminate your notoriety as this character. Despite these interesting mechanics, I just couldn't get into Liberation, and I dropped the game after 4 hours. It was a pain in the ass getting this game running on PC as it is. You basically have to disable every software overlay just to boot the game, including the one I usually use to record my gameplay footage. And I think I was just a little burned out on AC at the time, since I had just played Unity, Black Flag, Syndicate, Freedom Cry, Rogue, and Origins in quick succession. Maybe I'll return to Liberation someday to finish it off, but I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. If you've ever heard the phrase, "this is a good game, but a bad Assassin's Creed game," the conversation was probably referring to Assassin's Creed Black Flag. While swashbuckling and looting through the 18th century Caribbean is a crackin' good time, Black Flag is a significant departure from the classic Assassin's Creed experience. For starters, the protagonist, Edward Kenway, isn't even an assassin, at least not for the majority of the game. You start the game taking on another man's persona and hijacking a ship in the hopes of striking it rich. You eventually link up with a pirate colony and attempt to evade the ever-growing power of British naval authority. Black Flag's biggest contribution to the series, other than a badass protagonist in Edward, is the fully fleshed out naval combat. There were some naval battles in AC3, but this is the first time you really take control of your own ship and get to explore the high seas, raid forts, rob ships, and live that Jack Sparrow power fantasy. Exploration was a complete joy in this game as well. There are lots of collectibles, assassin contracts, and other activities to explore throughout the Caribbean. I absolutely love sailing around to different islands and getting 100% completion at every location I could find. And for better or for worse, this is when Ubisoft started pivoting the AC games into more open-world sandboxes, owing in part to the success of Far Cry 3, which came out the year prior. But there are some annoying things about Black Flag. For starters, there are a lot of tailing missions. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Tailing missions make up like 20% of the main story. It's also by far the longest of the early AC games, mainly because of the abundance of side activities and exploration, so I started to get a little burnt out by the end. All in all, Assassin's Creed Black Flag is a phenomenal experience that I would recommend to anyone who's a fan of the series. Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry is a spin-off title from Black Flag. It looks and feels like a Black Flag DLC, but it was sold as a standalone game that takes about 6 hours to complete. You play as Adewale, a freed slave who served as Edward Kenway's quartermaster in Black Flag. After parting ways with Edward, Adewale sailed to Haiti, where he gets wrapped up in a slave rebellion, and of course taking out lots of Templars. One of the big things I remember about Freedom Cry was liberating plantations. These kinda serve like Far Cry style outposts. You sneak in, kill the plantation guards, and free the captive slaves, ideally without being detected. Your combat tools are pretty similar to Edward's: smoke bombs, blow darts, hidden blade, etc. But you also get a machete for melee combat and a blunderbuss rifle, which basically acts like a grenade launcher. It's too fun to use. And don't forget about the naval combat and exploration, except instead of piracy, you're liberating slave ships or raiding naval convoys. If you like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, then you're sure to enjoy this game as well. I had an absolute blast, and it was a fun, bite-sized AC experience that I would recommend to any fan of Black Flag. Assassin's Creed Rogue is the forgotten black sheep of the AC franchise. It was unfortunately released on the same day as Assassin's Creed Unity, and quickly got overshadowed by that cyberpunk tier dumpster fire of a game launch. So basically, Rogue got completely cucked out by this screenshot. I often wonder how things could have been different if Ubisoft had just delayed Unity for a year and let Rogue shine on its own, rather than releasing them on the exact same day when Unity clearly wasn't finished. Rogue is one of the more unique titles in the series because for the first time we play as a Templar. I mean, yeah, we played as Hatham in AC3, but that was only for a couple of hours. Shay Cormac was a man totally down with the assassin cause, but after taking a trip to Lisbon,
Portugal! Lisbon, I'd stake my life on it!
Homeboy accidentally levels the whole city after interacting with an Isu relic, and decides to turn on his assassin homies because they are playing with dangerous powers they don't understand. It's an interesting concept, allowing us to play as a morally gray character. But unfortunately, Ubisoft kinda drops the ball with the story by just making the assassins evil instead. In this game, the assassins have no problems poisoning and killing civilians, while the Templars renovate businesses and reinvest in the community. This is not to say that Shay doesn't wrestle with the moral dilemma of what he's doing, as there are some phenomenal moments in the story where he assassinates and speaks to characters he used to be close with as an assassin.
You have become a monster, Shay.
But for the most part, Shay is able to justify his actions because the assassins show no moral scruples themselves in this game. I think AC is at its best when the assassin versus Templar, or freedom versus tyranny, chaos versus order themes are explored in a more complex way. Neither side is fully good nor bad, although the Templars typically commit more atrocities in these games. As for gameplay, Rogue has a similar feel to Black Flag as well. You again have naval combat, with the addition of rear-mounted flamethrowers, which were an absolute joy to use and a welcome replacement to the fire barrels. You can also buy up and renovate shops and landmarks, a la the Ezio trilogy. At the end of the day, Rogue ended up being one of my favorite AC games, and I continued to play long past the time I needed to clock for this video. I'm even contemplating a second playthrough, though I don't know when I'll ever find time for it. Assassin's Creed Unity was an absolute dumpster fire when it launched in 2014, but in the past few years, it's seen a bit of a redemption arc. As many, but certainly not all of the bugs were ironed out post-launch, and as the AC series transformed into open-world RPGs, fans began to rediscover that a lot of the mechanics in Unity were actually pretty fire. For starters, there's the parkour. Unity sports one of the most advanced free-running systems in the franchise, with level design that supports intricate and skilled parkour gameplay. You can seamlessly go through windows, side eject from walls, and parkour down the side of buildings while maintaining a high degree of momentum. But while Unity's parkour looks flashy in the hands of an experienced player, it feels really janky to play. This is partially because Arno will decide what animation to queue up whenever you press a button while free running. So sometimes he'll behave in ways you did not expect or intend to while climbing or bounding across rooftops. This level of jank and unpredictability bleeds into other systems as well, such as the cover system. Sometimes Arno will not snap into cover properly. Sometimes he'll get glued into cover. Sometimes he'll exit a crouch randomly for no discernible reason. There were so many moments in this game where I felt the gameplay systems caused me to get detected because something happened that I couldn't predict. The progression and skilled system is half-baked. Most of the skill upgrades are just basic gameplay features that have arbitrarily been removed from the player. Like, one of the skills is literally just stabbing a dude when he's knocked over. Why do I have to spend skill points to stab a guy on the ground again? Combat also feels exceptionally awful, especially in the early game. Something about the flow of the attack animations just feels off. But with a little practice, the parrying and combat system can be incredibly fun. That is, until enemies start whipping out guns and carving off 90% of your HP with a single blast from off-screen. Rogue and Black Flag had a good counter for ranged enemies. Whenever you were about to be shot, a button prompt would pop up on screen, allowing you to use an enemy as a human shield to absorb the bullet. In Unity, you just have to eat the damage, or quickly try to attack the shooter. Maybe you can chuck out a smoke bomb, but compared to Rogue and Black Flag, you just don't have the same reliability of defense options when enemies bring guns to a knife fight. All of these problems really hold back Unity from being a great game. It's difficult to have fun with the game when you're getting frustrated by all the jank. You have to really want to get to the good parts of the game by overlooking all of this. And if you can manage to do that, there is a great experience buried within the mess of gameplay systems. To me, where Unity really shines is the design of the assassination missions themselves. This is the closest AC ever came to mimicking the player-driven freedom and stealth that we see in the Hitman games. The missions begin with a survey of the level, displaying various opportunities for infiltration and distraction. The game will also tell you how many guards and entrances there are, and then you're dropped into the mission with the freedom to complete your assassination in any way you see fit. This stuff is all phenomenal, and it makes Assassin's Creed Unity really worth playing, but it's an acquired taste, to be sure. Assassin's Creed Chronicles is a series of 2.5D side-scrolling platformers released in 2015 and 2016. There are 3 games set in China, India, and Russia, respectively. And I'm gonna be honest, this type of game just ain't for me, man. I tried to put a few hours into these games for the video, but I just couldn't get into it. I've never been a fan of this style of game, so adding an Assassin's Creed skin to a genre I don't enjoy just ain't doing it for me. But hey man, I gave these games a shot nonetheless, so let's move on. Assassin's Creed Syndicate is the most underrated game in the series. Released a year after the disastrous launch of Unity, and just a few months after another scuffed Ubisoft launch in Watch Dogs, Syndicate sported some of the lowest sales figures the AC franchise has ever seen. And it's a damn shame because this is a really phenomenal game. For starters, the parkour system is very similar to Unity, with the ability to perform a lot of the same maneuvers. They also added a zipline gun, which makes traversing London's rooftops insanely fun, at the cost of bypassing parkour. While exploring on foot, you can ride carriages, which is surprisingly fun, especially considering you can carriage jack other passengers. I wasn't expecting to play Syndicate like Grand Theft Auto, but here we are. Carriages can be a bit buggy though, no pun intended. It's not uncommon to watch carriages jettison through the air, or NPCs getting trampled in a hit and run. I hope that guy had good health insurance, because the NHS wasn't rolled out for another 80 years or so. Assassin's Creed Syndicate follows the journey of twin siblings Jacob and Evie Fry, as they establish a gang, fight Templars, and hunt for Isu artifacts in Victorian-era London. Much like GTA 5, you can switch between both playable characters at any time in the open world. However, some missions can only be completed by either Jacob or Evie. Assassination missions follow a similar format to AC Unity. You start the mission with a brief cutscene that gives you the lay of the land. This opening cinematic will reveal opportunities, which are optional objectives you can complete to give you an easier chance at the target. Outside of missions, you can return to your train hideout to collect revenue, upgrade your gear, and pick up additional missions, or have a bit of banter with your sibling. The core gameplay loop involves conquering gang territory, gathering collectibles and chests, and completing side missions. The side missions in particular were really interesting and memorable. Many of them involve major historical figures from the time, such as Charles Dickens, Karl Marx, and even the Queen of England. All in all, Syndicate improved a lot of the things that Unity did well, and discarded some systems that held back the experience. So it's just a shame that many people overlook this game because, just like Rogue, it's one of the hidden gems of the AC franchise. Following the lukewarm sales and critical reception of AC Syndicate, Ubisoft took a year off to go back to the drawing board and do a soft reboot of the franchise. And what they came up with was Assassin's Creed Origins, an open-world action game with RPG elements set in ancient Egypt. We follow the journey of Bayek of Siwa, a man seeking vengeance for the death of his son at the hands of a strange cult. This journey leads to the establishment of the Hidden Ones, the precursor organization to the Assassin Brotherhood. The best part of Origins is the setting. Ancient Egypt is an absolute wonder to behold and a joy to explore. As a history buff, I reveled in walking through the Library of Alexandria, the Pyramids of Giza, and the Great Sphinx. While I do enjoy Assassin's Creed Origins, it does suffer from straddling the line between open-world RPGs and linear action stealth games. The world design and gameplay systems don't support the more focused assassin story arc and gameplay of the earlier games. You don't have the same opportunities for parkour or social stealth. But on the other hand, the linear nature of the narrative hurts replayability when compared to Odyssey and Valhalla, because there are no branching paths or player agency in the story. Sure, you have the freedom to go wherever you want on the map, pick up side quests, and complete most objectives in the order you want, but you can't really shape who Bayek is as a person or what direction the narrative goes in. Origins is still a really fun game, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters, but I certainly didn't enjoy it as much as Odyssey or Valhalla. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the most divisive game in the franchise. Many fans of the early AC games feel that Odyssey completely failed to capture the core experience of Assassin's Creed, but others absolutely love exploring the massive open world of ancient Greece, completing interesting quests, and betting everybody they can get their hands on. The divided opinions within the AC player base were so great that Odyssey fans split off from the main Assassin's Creed subreddit so they could discuss their love of Barnabas in peace. This is the top-rated post of all time in the subreddit, by the way. Personally, I love Assassin's Creed Odyssey. As a fan of open-world action games and RPGs, Odyssey provides an experience that none of the other games can match, particularly when it comes to branching narrative paths. Odyssey is the first game in this series to have multiple different endings based on the choices you make in the main quest, and many side quests have branching paths as well. I was completely shocked by all the different outcomes you can experience in this game, and it's clear that Ubisoft took inspiration from The Witcher 3 when developing Odyssey. Odyssey also cut out a lot of the most annoying elements from earlier games in this series. There are no tailing missions, no missions where you instantly fail if you're spotted for half a second, and no bards or beggars hassling you on the city streets. Just a fun blend of stealth, melee, and bow combat as you assassinate targets from the Cult of Cosmos. Naval combat and exploration are a treat in Odyssey as well. And while this certainly isn't the most complex naval combat we've seen in AC, it is the one I enjoyed the most. Odyssey also leaned heavily into Greek mythology for parts of the side content, particularly in the boss fights and DLC. I know some players will be turned off by the departure from historical realism, but I thoroughly enjoyed this side of the game as well. And finally, Odyssey has a lot of build variety in terms of different abilities and weapons you can utilize. For many people, I know this isn't what they're looking for in Assassin's Creed, but for me, Odyssey is the perfect AC game, which is mainly a testament to my enjoyment of open-world RPGs with narrative choices as opposed to linear stealth games. Different strokes indeed. Believe it or not, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was actually the first AC game I ever played. I remember scheduling a vacation from my day job to play Cyberpunk 2077, only for the game to get delayed until December 2020. So I ended up buying and playing Valhalla instead since I already had the time off. And man, I gotta say I really enjoy this game. It's pretty much Assassin's Creed in name only, but for an open-world Viking game, Valhalla is really fun. I had an absolute blast raiding settlements, bashing up Englishmen, and conquering territory for the Raven clan. Plus, Eivor is a really charismatic and likable character that I can identify with. But Valhalla is certainly not without its problems. For one, the game is incredibly bloated. You can easily spend over 100 hours on a single playthrough and another 50 to 100 hours with the DLC. But a lot of the content is just throwaway filler content, collectibles, and the sort. The story is also a bit disjointed, owing to how it's structured around conquering different regions of the map. Each region has its own story arc with its own characters, who are quickly discarded when you move on to the next region. I couldn't remember who most of the characters were, or which region I met them in, until I had played through the whole game about 3 times. The most interesting narrative hook is the story involving Sigurd and Eivor's relationship, but this will get shoved into the background for about half the game, while you go complete other detached regional narrative arcs. It's a bit of a mess. Valhalla is the definition of bigger is better philosophy, and it's clear that Ubisoft strove to make the most epic, largest, and longest Assassin's Creed game ever. But I think some quality was sacrificed to achieve that scope, much like a Bethesda game. Nonetheless, I still enjoy a good old Viking raid, and Valhalla scratches an itch that no other open-world game seems to satisfy for me. So, let's see how many hours have I played Valhalla. 369 hours? No shot. That's gotta be a bug. Oh god, I need to go outside. So let's wrap up this bad boy by making a power rankings list of all the Assassin's Creed games. I'm gonna set aside Liberation and Chronicles since I didn't finish those games. I'm also gonna table Mirage because I'm currently playing it. So here's my personal list. Number 1, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I know a lot of people will hate me for that, but I don't care. It's my favorite game in the series. Number 2, Assassin's Creed 2. You can't beat a classic. Number 3, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. This was the most refined AC game in the old formula, and I love the dual protagonist swapping. Number 4, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Who doesn't want to live out a pirate power fantasy? Number 5, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. You know, I'm noticing a trend here. The AC games I like the most are the least AC-like games in the series. Number 6, Assassin's Creed Revelations. If it had a more compelling story, this would have ranked higher on the list because in many ways it's my favorite of the Ezio trilogy. Number 7, Assassin's Creed Unity. Despite all the jank, those assassination missions are just god tier. Number 8, Assassin's Creed Rogue. I was tempted to rank this one above Unity. I love the gameplay, and there were some memorable missions, but the openness and freedom of Unity's assassination missions won out in the end. Number 9, Assassin's Creed Origins. Even I'm surprised I'm ranking this game so low. Origins is a great game, but there's a lot of competition, I suppose. Number 10, AC Freedom Cry. A solid game, but far too short to rank higher. Number 11, AC1. I appreciate the foundation it established, but it's not very fun to play. Number 12, AC Brotherhood. Overrated trash. Oh, I know some people are gonna hate that. That's so funny. Number 13, AC3. A complete dumpster fire and by far the worst game in the series. So there you have it. I played all 18 Assassin's Creed games so you don't have to. Obviously, a lot of these games are great, but playing all of them in a little over a year was a bit much. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more RPG and action game videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.